DUI jury trial, which is the true story of a truck driver in Illinois who was charged with driving under the influence of alcohol. Not only was he facing a revocation of his driver's license, but also a lifetime disqualification of his CDL, which would prevent him from ever driving a semi-truck again. This book includes backstories of the truck driver, the lawyers that defended the case, and the DUI expert witness who analyzed the case and then testified at trial as to the proper protocol procedures of the field sobriety tests as well as the breathalyzer test. This nonfiction novel also includes the actual court transcript from the jury trial, a courtroom showdown in which the final verdict would determine the fate of the defendant's livelihood. The book DUI Jury Trial is now available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410, Elgin time, 12 o'clock.
With the UK's Civil Aviation Authority tells Sky News the update is considered precautionary but urgent.
It's not all of the A320 aircraft, it's just some of the variants with a particular configuration of them, and it's asked airlines to make sure this maintenance, this precautionary maintenance is done as soon as possible.
It's considered a quick fix, taking most planes about 2 hours. More than 500 U.S. registered aircraft were affected, with American Airlines saying it completed most of the updates of its 209 affected planes on Friday. I'm Donna Warder.
Correspondent Rolf Wober reports there are new problems following that massive fire at a Hong Kong building complex.
Hong Kong authorities say that the terrible fire that ravaged a giant set of apartment blocks from Wednesday this week is now officially under control as of Friday morning. But the fallout remains. People are still without homes. The numbers of dead and missing are still not confirmed. So there's a huge aftermath which still remains, and for Hong Kong, which is such a densely populated place, so many people live in high-rise apartment blocks like this. Everybody is in distress about this.
Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney and Alberta Premier Danielle Smith signed a memorandum of understanding this week to advance a new oil pipeline from Alberta to Canada's Pacific coast. The goal is to ship up to 1 million barrels per day to Asian markets, reducing Canada's heavy dependence upon U.S. buyers for its product. That project is running into some resistance already from environmental groups. More from townhall.com.
Coverage varies by plan. View contracts and exclusions at endurancewarranty.com.
In sports, it's the dream team. And if your car is out of warranty, there's a team for that as well. You, the driver, your mechanic, and Endurance to pay for the repair bills. I'm Danica Patrick. In the past 5 years, auto repair costs have gone up over 36%. And if your manufacturer's warranty is expired, you'll have to cover it all. With an Endurance auto protection plan, no matter what the mileage, if your car is under 20 years old, Endurance can get you covered on the engine, electrical system, transmission, AC, and more. Endurance has plans for any budget. Repairs can be done by the certified mechanic of your choice. Plans cover 24/7 towing, battery jumps, fuel deliveries, tire changes, and lockout services. Act now and get the benefits of our Elite Plan, a $2,000 value at no extra cost. With Endurance, you could never pay for covered auto repairs again. So call now for your free quote.
Call 800-454-4558. That's 800-454-4558. 800-454-4558.
The UN Security Council has approved a U.S. plan for Gaza. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says Hamas is, at its core, a terrorist organization and it's not operating alone.
The Israelis understand that October 7th wasn't an aberration. It wasn't just that Hamas lost its mind for a moment. It was a concerted effort on the part of the Iranian leadership to use its terror proxies to change the conditions on the ground in the Gulf Arab states and broadly in the Middle East.
Pompeo says he does support the idea of an international security force to help keep the peace in the region. Israel, he says, will need to play a major role because it understands what needs to be done.
But it's going to have to be prepared to do the hard work of continuing to disarm Hamas and destroy the remaining tunnels. I suspect that the only organization actually prepared to do that is the Israeli government, and they need to complete that task.
The U.S. plan authorizes an international stabilization force to provide security. You'll find breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. The application of artificial intelligence in a political campaign is the crux of a legal case in New Hampshire involving a political consultant who sent AI-generated robocalls mimicking former President Joe Biden to state Democrats in 2024. Speaking with Salem Radio military affairs analyst, retired Lieutenant Colonel Robert McGinnis, said media applications of AI do challenge our perceptions of truth and reality.
It's hard to distinguish between what is now AI generated and what is human generated. So, we're in a new world in which you don't know what the truth is and what is really something we must take to heart.
And Colonel McGinnis sums up many of his concerns and hopes regarding AI in a new book entitled AI for Mankind's Future, a Christian Perspective on the High-Tech Revolution. More from Town Hall.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Chicago defense attorney Mark Schieblo has co-authored the book titled DUI Jury Trial, which is a true story of a DUI case that he defended. The accused was an Illinois truck driver arrested for driving under the influence of alcohol. This book contains facts about the case from the date of the arrest up to the jury's verdict, and this nonfiction novel also includes the transcripts from the jury trial itself. The book DUI Jury Trial is now available on Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com.
Fix bayonets, comrades. This is Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt every Saturday, noon until 2 on WRMN 1410 AM, the Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Our studio number here is 847-931-1410. Our text is 505-926-1410. Or you can hit us up in the comments on the YouTube live channel, WRMN 1410. As always, you can catch our previous shows on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. And something really, before I get on with anything else, it's just with deepest sympathies, Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, she died Thanksgiving 2 days ago. It's absolutely terrible. Absolutely the most heinous thing I think that's happened in the last 24 years in the United States. I really got to say that. Just an outstanding National Guard soldier that volunteered to do duty, unarmed duty in our nation's capital, which it's sad to say is one of the most dangerous places on earth. But she was killed by a cowardly, just an absolutely cowardly, I don't even, a poor mimic of a human being, a very cowardly person that drove cross-country to commit this act. He was given a good life in the United States, claimed that he didn't like where he was living, and was coming back because he was fearing for his life, and the first thing he does is kill one of our soldiers. My prayers going out for the full recovery of Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who was her partner out there and who tried to fight back, who tried to fight back against this guy, wounding him, and he was wounded when he was taken into custody. And I don't even want to mention his name. I was in I did 3 tours in Afghanistan, and you call up and argue with me and tell me that many of the Afghan people you knew were fantastic and great, and I'm sure there's one or two out there. I have met some an Afghan national that was actually in the Army Reserve. He had been an officer in the Afghan National Army. He came to the United States and became an enlisted soldier in our Army Reserve. he was okay, seemed okay. But after 3 years of being over there, I wouldn't let one of them come into this country. I would be sitting there at the State Department and saying, denied, denied, denied. You know, we've talked about this in the past. Now I'm going to make it very clear here. Title 10 of the United States Code, and the United States Code is written by our congressmen and our senators. All right, either a senator introduces a bill and it gets passed by the Senate, then it goes to the House of Representatives, they pass it, and then it goes to the president to be signed. Once it's signed by the president, it can only be reviewed and interpreted by the Supreme Court, should such a case get up to the Supreme Court, should someone have standing to bring it up there. So if you don't like the laws are on the books, then you really need to pressure your congressmen and your senators to change these laws or to eliminate the laws. If they're not if they are not an actual amendment to the Constitution, it's a simple 51% vote to get to the president's desk. So when they had 51% in both houses and the presidency, if they didn't like these laws that were on the books, or if they never bothered to read any of the laws on the books, then it's on them and it's on you for not pushing them. So Title 10 of the U.S. Code 12406, National Guard and Federal Service. The United States or any of the Commonwealth's possessions is invaded or is in danger of invasion by a foreign nation. There is a rebellion or danger of rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws, orders for those purposes shall be issued. Okay. Third, the final paragraph. The president may call into federal service members and units of the National Guard and of any state in such numbers as he considers necessary to repel the invasion, suppress the rebellion, or execute those laws, orders. Orders for these purposes shall be issued through the governors of the states, or in the case of the District of Columbia, through the commanding general of the National Guard of the District of Columbia. The commanding general of the National Guard, because District of Columbia, people think, oh, we should make it a state, but there was a big thing when we originally founded this country on keeping the capital out of control of any of the states. So therefore, the District of Columbia, with its National Guard, falls strictly under federal control. Federal laws guide it. Their city council makes laws for the District of Columbia, which are considered federal laws and federally enforceable. All right, so well within his rights. If the governor of West Virginia didn't want his people to be activated and become federal troops under President Trump, he could have refused. Yet he did not, so they were activated. So everything, in my opinion and red opinion, in 38 years in the service, Army Reserve, National Guard, multiple calls for all sorts of reasons, everything's legit, 100% legit. So if anyone goes out there and tries to flip this on, well, that person wouldn't have died if they hadn't been called up to active duty by President Trump. That is true. That is true. That's true. They could have been hit by a bus walking out of their car. But here's the thing. Because they were called up by President Trump, and because, or any president has called people, called forces up, right? Because the atmosphere out there is so toxic against our current president, and they turn it toxic against anything he does, and they're trying to turn people against him, right? They don't want to turn people, quote, against the military, but they want to turn the military against him, but the military has to follow his rules. And it's such a toxic situation that it emboldens people to say, hey, everyone hates these guys, you know, they're not there illegally, so I might as well go and shoot them, you know. And that's what the press has done that time and time again, dating back to Vietnam. These guys were drafted, they went over there, they did what they were told, all right? The press had zoomed the war up to be bad, everything to be bad, the soldiers to be bad. They blew isolated incidents completely out of proportion and made it look like every soldier over there was responsible. And these guys come home and they're treated terribly, absolutely terribly. Just as terrible for no reason except the press spun up what do you call it? They created their own vision.
Agenda.
They have an agenda, and they created their own vision, and they pushed it off on people. And I'm sorry, there's enough dumb people out there that believe everything the press tells them because they put it right in their head. Why would they say it on the air if it wasn't true? Couldn't they be liable? Yeah, sure. When you get people that actually lied to Congress, right, and a judge throws out the case based on a technicality. Dug for it, found it, got rid of it. So, but all right. So I got that out of. I mean, I can't tell if you're not mad out there. If you're lividly mad about this, lividly angry about this, mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore, screaming out the window, you're still not mad enough. You are still not mad enough. If you turn on network TV and watch the network news, you are not mad enough. If you turn on cable TV and watch the cable news channels, you are not mad enough. If you buy any product that's advertised on these news channels, you are not mad enough. You need to be madder. You need to say, hey, we want MSNBC or NBC News to have a 0 rating. A 0 rating. You know, or 100,000 people a night. Whippy, you know, until the guys making the money, like I said about the shutdown was going to last long enough until the government contractors that were making money off the people that were working for the government and other things started to lose enough money, then the shutdown would end. And be the same thing there. As soon as they stop making money, these news channels stop making money from their advertisement, that's the only time the editor is going to be forced by the owners who are taking a loss to change their editorial view. And believe me, they have no principles. They will change their view in a second, and they will lie to your face and say, no, I didn't change my view. That's always been my view. And you can play it back to them on videotape with them saying those words, and they go, well, you misunderstood me. But they don't care about the damage that they already caused. So if you don't agree with me, call into the show, right? We'll discuss it. Yes, I am angry. I am animated. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to be mean to you. I'm not going to call you names. About the worst thing you'll hear is click. All right, Paul, I got that out of my system. You got any anger you want to get out of your system?
No, but I think that we should immediately start proceedings against this Herman Goring guy in a military tribunal, and then just have it done and over with, and give him his due process under the military tribunal, and then that's it. Be done with it.
If you put him under military tribunal, all right. Here's the thing: you're giving him a status. You're giving him a status of a legal enemy combatant.
He is. He is.
He is an illegal enemy combatant.
Well, he is, because he's not in uniform, and he went across the country. He had a plan, and let's do it. You know, let's be over with it.
He's
You know?
yeah. Well, we're a country of laws, and we're going to talk to.
And you know what? It'll be done a lot faster than 12, 18, 20 years.
Yes, it will take
I
time.
I want this stuff over with, you know, because you know, the guy that shot McKinley, you know, he got his fair trial. You know, McKinley, I think, died around October something or November something or December, and the dude, you know, within 25 days was tried, convicted, and executed. Let's go. You know, let's give him his. Let's. If he wins, he wins. If he, you know, why are we waiting? Why are because the longer he is there, the more of a martyr he becomes to whoever. And let's do this fast. You know, we're all about speedy trial. We're all about fair justice. Let's give them some. You know, when you show people that we're right there down with it, you'll see a lot less of this probably. And you know, for the guy to have a plan, and you know, I saw, I don't know if it's true or not, his family's already back there, wherever there is.
He sent them back to Afghanistan?
Yeah.
So because he was so afraid, afraid to be there that he got him and his whole family out, right? Whole family out. And here, I'm going to get even more mad about this. This is where our State Department needs to, they need to live in the real world. They need to get off the rose-colored glasses and step outside of their bubble. All right? They need to be down there in the dirt in the real world and not protected or anything else. They should be embedded with the infantry at a COP somewhere. All right? Eating the same food and dealing with these people on one-on-one basis. So what gets me is that we bring in all these refugees from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan, from Ethiopia, for all these, you know, from Ukraine, all these places that are in turmoil and have been in turmoil, right? But we bring them in here and they go on the public dole, public aid, right? They're getting money, which is more money than they've ever had, a higher standard of living, you know. They got a place to live and everything, and they get enough money up, and they're like, hey, let's go visit the relatives back in Syria. Soon as they leave this country, right? Because they still have their passport. They don't have a U.S. passport. They still got their foreign passport. They got their visa. They go visit. They come back, you know. No one stops them coming back in. As soon as they leave the country, void their visas. Void it. Don't let them back in. But I just went to visit my sick grandmother. Okay, let's stay with your sick grandmother. But my family's back in, you know, Spokane, right? And you go, well, oh, that's cool. Well, they could go visit your grandmother too. No, we're not stopping them from leaving. You see, but they don't do that. They know the problem exists. It absolutely exists. They'll turn a blind eye and go, well, that's only 1 in a million. No, it's not. It's quite a few, right? So they're laughing at you saying, oh, I'm afraid to go back. And then a year later, they're back there. What's changed?
Nothing.
Well, nothing, except that we gave them the money to get back there and to spend it over there and come back with being re-indoctrinated over there. They come re-indoctrinated here. The other thing, having worked in Afghanistan for 3 years, right, is that these guys, right, they were, quote, working for us. They were getting paid by us. We were paying them money. That's it. That's how they worked for us. We paid them money. They were collecting on us. They were giving information and intelligence on us. Sometimes they were actively involved in ambushes against our troops. And they all had that, oh, I work for the U.S. Army. And so when they come over here, they go, oh, I got this old card here. And the State Department says, go ahead, boom. And they're They worked for the CIA. The CIA. Oh, I don't even want to. What they did, their gross, massive incompetence. Gross and massive incompetence. Early in the war, they brought one of their guys working for them, right, onto a base and blew up 8 soldiers. Yay! Because the CIA said they were good. They were good. He's our guy. Don't worry about him. He's our guy. Ba-boom! You know? So just to say that you work for the CIA doesn't mean a dang thing. I would use that as a negative against him. I mean, like, if he was knocking on the door to get in with people with pitchforks and torches and paddle axes chasing him, and he says, "You got to let me in. I worked for the CIA." I'd close another door. I'd make sure that guy never got in. I just don't. It's not that. It's a complete matter of distrust, right? And one of the things that got me is this guy comes over in 2021, all right, under someone else's regime, right? When everything was falling apart, even though they were told countless occasions for 20 years that the Afghan National Army wasn't going to stand once we left. It would be gone in a matter of, they said, a month. It'll last maybe a month. They were wrong. It lasted maybe an hour, right? They were gone. And guess what? They all blended most of them blended right back into the Taliban. Who were they working for anyways? Because there was a shadow government that our State Department, our DIA, everyone knew about it. No one wanted to acknowledge it because there was a failure on their part then. Oh, especially the State Department, who couldn't get the massively corrupt Afghan government, on board with just spending 1% of the money we're giving them on the actual people. They're too busy thieving it, stealing it, sending it to Iran, it's nuts. When he says all these countries in turmoil, right, that we're closing doors to them, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Close the doors. But what about that one family that's just trying to get away? Go to another country. United States isn't the only country in this world. Hey, listen, you're a Palestinian. You're being harassed by the Israelis, right, over there. You don't like them? Okay. Get in your boat, cross the Arabian Sea, and go to Saudi Arabia. Just land on a beach there and walk in. Hey, they'll give you refugee status. Just tell them you're afraid of the Israelis. Think that's going to happen? But no. All of a sudden, President Trump says, we're closing the door to these guys. Someone else take up the slack. We're tired of them coming in and blowing up our country and hurting our people and stealing from us. Stealing, thieving. You bring them into the country, right? They're living in a mud hut over there, terrible conditions, absolutely terrible conditions. They come over here, their conditions, even under the most poverty, right? The most, what we consider poverty here, have improved 100%, 1,000%, their conditions have improved. So then they steal money and they send it back to the country where their conditions were 1,000 times worse. It's like, who does that? Enemies of the United States. That's who does that. People that are destroying the United States slowly from within. Parasites. Some parasites keep the body alive. Some parasites are kind of good. People say leeches are bad. But if you've ever been leeched, you actually get this feeling of euphoria and everything. And leeches have a purpose. If you have a gross amputation and they try to sew the limb back on, they use leeches to open up the capillaries in the area and helps heal, right? So some natural parasites are good. They actually serve a purpose. The bacteria in our bowels serve a purpose, right? And then some are really bad. Some parasites, some societies are just parasitic societies, right? And you let the people in and they don't change their parasitic ways. They continue on and get worse. All right, we'll be back after the break. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Scilink.net. That's Papa, Sierra, Yankee, Lima, India, November, Kilo, dot, November, Echo, Tango.
Welcome to downtown Elgin, where businesses, community, and creativity come together. The Downtown Neighborhood Association provides valuable, complimentary services to all downtown businesses, organizations, property owners, and residents, helping you gain exposure and thrive. Whether you're already part of the district or exploring a new downtown location, DNA is here to help your vision grow. Join us in creating a vibrant, connected, and successful downtown Elgin. Call now 847-488-1456, or you can email info@downtownelgin.com. Ask for Jennifer Facala. Downtown Neighborhood Association, where the heart of business beats strong.
Systems run everything. Government, economy, media, justice. They shape your choices, your opportunities, your future. But do they work for you or against you? On Apolitical Talk Show, we break them down, not to destroy, but to understand. Because if you don't see how the system works, you won't see when it's being manipulated or who's benefiting from it. Power belongs to those who know the rules, challenge the loopholes, and demand accountability. That starts with knowledge. That starts here. Join us weekdays from 4 to 6 p.m. as we uncover what's really happening behind the headlines so you can decide for yourself what's fair, what's broken, and what needs to change. Apolitical Talk Show, breaking down the systems to build them up together. Right here, weekdays 4 to 6 on WRMN, the talk of the town.
Children are the greatest joy and our best hope for a better future. Friends, they are the future. But did you know that millions of kids right here in our own backyard are facing hunger every day? Without healthy food, it's harder to grow, to thrive, to feel their best.
The impact when children don't have enough to eat is tremendous because when you're hungry and your basic needs aren't being met, you cannot learn.
Every child deserves to be fed. This is a problem we know how to solve. Food is not just food. It's energy, health, confidence, hope, and even love. Yes, love.
Breakfast in the classroom contributes to kids being more focused, which leads to higher grades, and simply just their well-being.
Learn more about how No Kid Hungry is helping end child hunger in America at helpnokidhungry.org.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvitt on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube Live channel. Fix Binet's comrades, we're back for the second quarter of the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show every Saturday, noon until 2. If you're listening in, you'll hear us next Saturday. So we're streaming on WRMN 1410 AM, as you know, if you're listening on the radio. But if you are streaming us, you probably know that we're at 1410, WRMN1410.com, WRMN1410.com. Go to your website. It gives you the links to listen live. Gives you the links to the YouTube Live and all their YouTube channel with all the older shows. And of course, you can watch all of our previous shows. I've uploaded them all, and they're on the Chief Guard of the Republic YouTube channel. So, that's the Chief Guard of the Republic webpage there, cgr.silink.net. I got to update that. But see, some of our sponsors, Post 104 for Schiller Park, the Special Forces Association, my daughter's wrestling show. We had the last wrestling show of the year. We had to cancel the December one because it was too close to everything else. But we had a great show last night, the Ultimate Combat Gauntlet. If you go to the Ultimate Combat Gauntlet on YouTube, oh my God, they got all the shows. She hired a guy to do the filming, and it's like being there because it's right up on the ring and everything. So, yeah, we got some sponsors up there. Of course, they don't pay us anything. I'm thinking of, speaking of like sponsors or unpaid sponsors, the those highly oppressed, overworked, underpaid. I mean, it's like a drudgery. It's like being down in the coal mines, swinging a pickaxe, doing back-breaking labor, underground, breathing in coal dust, so you could power the country. I mean, working at Starbucks is absolutely equivalent to that. I mean, why shouldn't they unionize? It's just like being a coal miner, So, I mean, look at the skill set you have. You can lift, what's the biggest, 24-ounce coffee cup or something? 24-ounce, maybe bigger if you have the frozen drinks.
It's called a Trenta.
A Trenta. You could lift a Trenta with one hand. Oh, that's some labor there. So they're on strike. But, they used to have their logo. Oh, here it is. Blue Box Cafe over on Chicago Avenue. They're still open. They still make a great cup of coffee and a great sandwich, too. So a little shout out for them. Yeah.
Oh, they do have the gobbler available.
Okay.
Nice.
Oh, I should have tried that.
That's good.
Yeah, it is a good one. I usually go with the Dalek. All right, so I've kind of vented that out. If someone wants to call in and vent on that too, go ahead. But really, as much honor as possible to Sarah Beckstrom. Just joining the Guard. Okay, so we're at the wrestling show last night, and we give a veteran first responder discount. And this little girl walks in. She was local to Bedford Park around there. And she says, well, I'm with the National Guard. I go, oh, you are? You get a discount. And she shows me her ID. I go, well, what unit are you with? She goes, I'm down at Marseilles. I says, what's your MOS? Military Operations Specialty. She goes, 12 Bravo. That's combat engineer. That's combat arms. This girl was about the size of Sergeant Barkham and Sergeant Raby. There was two little girls I was in Afghanistan with. Great women. I says, oh, that's great. I'm always excited to see a young person in the Guard and Reserve because I have so much knowledge busting out of my head. I says, listen, stay in for the 20. It'll be worth it. Trust me. It'll be worth it. Stay in for the 20. Stay in for the long run. Have you considered this? Have you considered that? I'm like, I should have just handed out. I gave her my coin. I gave her my last CW5 coin. I'm like, there you go. But yeah, so I want to say a lot of honor to Sarah Beckstrom, a lot of prayers for Sergeant Andrew Wolf, right? And every other Guard member that's been called up to support the United States of America, to support your country, all right? You have been called up for anyone's ego. You have been called up to stick it to any governor. You haven't been called about that. You're called up to help fix the country, to help heal the country, to help our country thrive, be better for everyone. God bless you all serving on that active service. God bless you all. All right. So now, however, I saw something, Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of War, right, and about housing, how housing is like our troops are unnecessarily poorly housed. It's always been a crime the way the lower enlisted, and sometimes even some officers, single officers, have been treated. The housing is just terrible. You deploy overseas and sometimes you get better housing than you were in. And so I got like a couple war stories about that. So we're deploying in 2006 over to Afghanistan, and we had to go to Fort Gordon for some training. It was 2 weeks of training before we went over to Afghanistan. And because, you know, someone had finally realized that they were training us on convoy duties when we were actually intelligence and interrogators, so that convoy duty wasn't going to help us over at the prison. So they decided to give us some interrogation training, and Fort Gordon was hosting it. So we move everyone up to Fort Gordon, and they house the officers and the senior enlisted, of which we only had one sergeant first class, and the officers got housed in what they call the BOQ, which at that time was taken over by the Holiday Inn Express. All right, so the Holiday Inn was running this thing. It was the old Army hotel. It was semi-decent. You know, it's like being in a Motel 6. That's what level it was on. But they go and they put all the lower enlisted, which is staff sergeant and below, they put them into the barracks. And the only ones in these barracks were specialists and below on active duty, single specialists and below. And they had been ignored, I think, for years living over there, that no one ever bothered them and gave them an inspection. Right? So we were under General Order Number 1. It said that you couldn't drink. Couldn't drink. Because who needs a drunken soldier? We're under General Order Number 1. Active duty wasn't under General Order Number 1 yet. So all these kids, if they're 21, and some of them even not 21, you get liquor anyways, had all sorts of booze in their rooms. But the rooms were actually filthy and everything. And we got there on a Sunday, and this active duty lieutenant colonel, some big guy, right? Big gym muscle guy, shows up on a Sunday, and you could tell he was there just to flex. You know, he was flexing. I'm an active duty colonel, and you just guys are stinking reservists. You know, everything. And so my guys are coming to me. They see the rooms that they got to live in, and they're filthy pigsties. One guy was rebuilding a motorcycle engine on the spare bed in his room. So my guys got to sleep on a oil-soaked mattress, right? They didn't have any toilet paper. The light bulbs were all gone because they hadn't been replaced and everything. And they tell me that there's booze all over the place. Like, these guys, just half-open bottles, everything all over. Like, these guys were, I mean, you take a 16-year-old and you give him money and have him live in his room, and his mom's never checking on him, right? So I go up to this lieutenant colonel because our captains were useless, right? And I go to him and I go, hey, excuse me, Colonel, all right? My boys are telling me that your guys have all sorts of alcohol in the room. Well, we're under General Order number 1 that says that we can't drink. So I would appreciate it if your guys, that my guys will be staying with for these 2 weeks, put the booze away. This guy gets all up, well, about the same height. Maybe he's an inch or two taller than me. And he goes, I'm not denying my guys anything they're entitled to. I'm like, oh, okay. What was I asking? For them to put the booze away, right? I says, hey, you guys, y'all got camera phones? And they said, yeah. I go back to your room and start taking pictures. I want you to text them all those pictures to me, because tomorrow morning, bright and early, Monday morning, I am walking myself to the base commander, and I'm going to knock on his open door policy, and I'm going to show him the pictures of these rooms and the condition they're in with all these kids living there, all right? In filthy conditions. And all of a sudden, because I said it loud enough to be heard, they weren't going to feed us because they said, oh, we didn't tell the mess hall you were coming, and, we don't have transportation. All of a sudden, they start, this colonel talks to a major, and the major goes, oh, we're going to feed you. Everyone get on the buses. We're going to take you over to mess hall. Suddenly, we're going to get fed, right? We weren't going to get it before. We're going to have to go and buy a sandwich somewhere or order pizza. So now he calls in, they call in all the company commanders, all the first sergeants, all the senior NCOs, all their supply guys, and they GI that barracks. They clean it like the white tornado. They go through it, clean everything, just like, and it was a, nightmare for them. They had to go get, I guess people had to go out of pocket, go to the Walmart and get toilet paper and light bulbs because supply didn't have any. They had to get cleaning materials. They had to clean these rooms. They had to go switch out, other mattresses. And the only thing I had asked for is this little thing, right, to be done. And guy got on my face. But his people have been living there for months like that. They're just in filth. You have to. They're adults, but they're not adults. The first time they left home was in basic training. They got broken for 8 weeks, maybe another 8 weeks in their AIT school. Then they get to active duty, and all of a sudden, they're put in a room by themselves, and no one's screaming at them when they're in their room. They just don't maintain. They haven't had enough of that as in a group barracks. And so a lot of this doesn't fall. It doesn't fall on the buildings themselves. The buildings were new. They were sufficient, all right? They were good. They had beds. They were 3-man rooms. We used to have like 40 guys living on a floor, 40 people in bunk beds living on a floor, just like, Full Metal Jacket. That's where you live. That's where you went to, you're going to this class. Everyone's in there. No one's in a private room, right? But these guys got private rooms, and it was their leadership that betrayed them. Because you have to have some discipline, and you have to know how to enforce the discipline, right? And they were saying, well, these guys, they're stuck on the base. They can't live off base. They don't have cars. So they called it BOSS, Better Opportunities for Single Soldiers. And it was just, it's just like letting the 2-year-old pick out their own breakfast at the grocery store. It's going to be ice cream and candy bars. And that's what these lower enlisted guys were doing. So the barracks were falling apart because they weren't being maintained. And they weren't being maintained because the leadership was ignoring these guys off duty, letting them do basically whatever they wanted. Like crazy stuff. Yeah. And, the other failure, one of the failure, when they brought up a new brigade of the 82nd Airborne, they said, where are we going to put them? We don't have housing for them. But they had condemned barracks, which were newer than the barracks that were built during World War II, where the Guard and Reserves all stayed before they deployed. But they have these cinder block long barracks, and they have been abandoned because they've been condemned. And they said, well, we'll put them in these old buildings here, and they're just going to deploy overseas. So while they're deployed overseas, the rear echelon will make sure that those barracks get fixed up, right? So they go overseas for a year, they come back, nothing's been done. Again, they're betrayed. But who are they betrayed by? Their own leadership. But who is their leadership? No one's looking down on the leadership and double checking, because some people are just too high rank to go in there to check or send someone over there and say, hey, you know, are those drains cleared in the bathroom so there's not a foot of water in the showers? Yeah. So it's to throw money at repairing these things. They should look at the worst of these barracks and relieve the commanders, chain of command, bottom to top, for cause. You allowed these conditions to exist. That is not in the good practices of the morale standards and good discipline of the Army. All right? We'll put you somewhere where you don't have to be in charge of troops anymore. Enjoy TRADOC, buddy. Or something like that, you know. But they're going to throw money at it and build more new buildings. And what I laugh about that is that the new buildings that they built, right? For case in point, Fort Sheridan, right? They built a new reserve center there. I wonder if I told this story out there, right? So when Fort Sheridan shut down as an active duty post, it had been an active duty post at once. It shut down. They took the north part of it, which was all the old brick buildings, the officer housing, the senior enlisted housing. They took that and they gave it to a developer. Made it lovely. It's beautiful. Fantastic. The south side of the post had a bunch of double wides on there and had all the World War II barracks, the wooden ones. So they put reserve units into these wooden barracks and into the old barracks that they had for the cinder block ones that they had for recruiting command. But these buildings were designed to be housing units, not to be offices for reserve units, you know, not to be drill areas or anything. So as these wooden barracks fell apart on top of us, they would move us to another one until that fell apart. And then finally we went into these old barracks, the cinder block ones, which were falling apart at a slower rate. So they decide that they're going to build a new reserve center, a new National Guard armory, new reserve buildings, right? So they build one, and it's like 2 years behind schedule, over budgeted and everything. And the only reason we moved in is because they were going to demolish the building that we were in. Then we'd have nowhere to go. So we move in over there, they sign for everything, and there's a whole thing with that. Once you sign for it, it's like yours, even though you're not allowed to check it out to see if it actually works or whatever. So in the old barracks, the old recruiting barracks there where we had our offices, there had been a water fountain that had never worked right. It would overflow, it would clog up, whatever, probably because people were spitting their tobacco juice in there all the time, which is disgusting, but that's an Army thing, right? And so we had asked to get it repaired from the Corps of Engineers. And this had been at least 2 years that I know of, maybe 5 years. The day before they tore that building down, here come the Corps of Engineers with a brand new water fountain, and they installed it just so you could tear the building down around it. That's the government. That's the government, right? So now they're in this building, and because they pay for like one architect to build a one-size-fits-all, all right, training center for Guard and Reserve. So if you're down in Florida or Georgia, a lot of bases in Georgia, right, or Texas, right, and you have solar-powered water heaters, as long as the sun's up, guess what you get? You get hot water, right? But in February at Fort Sheridan, under clouds, and you've just done your physical fitness training and everyone's sweated up and you got to go take showers, guess how much hot water there was?
Zero.
None. It was like you're surprised the pipes weren't frozen. There was no backup for that. No one stood up and said, excuse me here. sorry, but it gets cold and it gets cloudy. What are you going to do? And no one asked that question because no one cared. Then, all right, another thing for troops where they make these regulations. So the full-time people that were there at this building, they put in a gym, a nice little gym, right? Has the weights, has the machines, the Nautilus machines and everything in there, has ellipticals. The full-timers decided that they didn't want part-timers, all right, the guys that only showed up on the weekends to use these gyms because they would wreck them or whatever they would say. So that was what was put out by the senior full-time person on that base, was like, no part-timers could use this. So the commanding general of the 75th Division comes in to try to use it, and they stopped him. I said, no, you're a part-timer. You're not HER. We told him, you can't go in there. Whose right is that? That's for all of us to use. But what they didn't realize also was the air conditioning unit and the heating unit and everything wasn't checked for humidity levels, and the humidity levels were too high, and the whole system got flooded with black mold. So they couldn't. It was too expensive because the whole building was infested with it. They couldn't remediate it, right? So they had to they had to condemn the building, tear it down after they built it. I mean, how long have we been building brick and mortar buildings in the United States?
Couple hundred years.
Yeah. And how do you spend millions and millions of dollars? You worked in the state of Illinois building, didn't you?
I did.
What happened when it get real hot in the summer?
Well, they didn't have enough money to use insulated glass, so every row was insulated, uninsulated, insulated, uninsulated. So when we first moved in there, it was like 108 degrees.
Nice. I heard stories of people trying to throw chairs through the windows.
Yeah, and then they forgot to put a muffler system on the elevator shaft because there was a low one. I actually lost some of my hearing because of that, because I was initially out in a ring where I had a cubicle, and it was terrible. I mean, it was noisy, and it was crazy.
Yeah. All right. So my words to our Secretary of War is, beyond looking at buildings that are dilapidated, find out why. And then find out those people responsible for not instilling the discipline and the maintenance. Because you can't fire all the lower enlisted. They need shepherding. They need a good shepherd there. And if the shepherd isn't watching them, they'll just do whatever they want. Tear the place up. There's got to be some limitations. And that's going to save you a little bit of discipline is going to save you billions of dollars in repairs, remediation, and building new facilities. So I could say these guys actually have it pretty good. They actually have it pretty good in the rooms, the square footage that they have, the beds. They don't have to share with 39 other people. They're only sharing with maybe 2 people at the most. But it's not the tools. Sometimes it's the person. So when we come back, we'll have some more discussion here. You want to call in? It's 847-931-1410. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tooman, now featuring the international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tooman's webpage at Silink.net. That's Papa Sierra Yankee Lima India November Kilo dot November Echo Tango. Join your co-hosts Mike Tooman and Paul Burvid on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel.
Your hometown radio station since 1949. We are WRMN AM 1410 Elgin time, 1 o'clock.
Breaking news at Town Hall. I'm Bob Agnew in Washington. The holiday shopping season off to a strong start.
Shoppers shopped till they dropped on Black Friday. Adobe Analytics, which tracks e-commerce, says U.S. consumers spent a record $11.8 billion online Friday. Traffic was especially heavy from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. local time, when some $12.5 million passed through online shopping carts every minute. Adobe says even on Thanksgiving Day, consumers broke records, spending $6.4 billion online. Software company Salesforce estimates that Black Friday online sales totaled $18 billion in the U.S., $79 billion globally. I'm Donna Warder.
And UPS is addressing its holiday delivery logistics in the wake of the recent crash of one of its jets in Kentucky.
UPS grounded its fleet of McDonnell Douglas MD-11s after a fiery crash in Louisville, Kentucky earlier this month. 14 people were killed, including the plane's crew of 3, when the left engine detached during takeoff. Now the company says that fleet is expected to miss the peak holiday season as it goes through inspections and possible repairs. An internal memo predicts it'll be several months before the MD-11 fleet returns to service. UPS says it intends to rely on contingency plans to deliver for customers throughout the peak holiday season. I'm Ben Thomas.
Meantime, airlines around the world scrambling after Airbus ordered an urgent software rollback on thousands of its A320 jets. A lot of snow, rain, and cold weather await travelers for the rest of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, with winter storm warnings posted on Friday across the northern part of the country and more snow falling over the Great Lakes region. Storm warnings and advisories extending from Montana to New York. More on these stories at townhall.com.
In a shocking new 5-part series from Kevin Sorbo, Prescription to Kill reveals a lethal FDA cover-up.
Americans have witnessed a dramatic rise in mass killings. At a school, a house of worship, a crowded theater, a packed concert, leaving behind a trail of death and destruction. But what's behind this sudden surge of lethal violence? One determined researcher cracked open the FDA vault, exposing for the first time secret files linking prescription drugs to mass shootings and infamous murders.
There is a reason that we are the leader in unprovoked mass murder in this country, and it's our over-prescription of psychiatric drugs. There's no doubt about it.
In Prescription to Kill, we investigate the hidden connection between the pharmaceutical industry and America's culture of violence.
What their doctor doesn't know could kill you. Discover the truth that could save many lives. Don't miss Prescription to Kill. Watch it now on salemnow.com. That's salemnow.com.
Deputy Secretary of Agriculture Stephen Baden has some good news for American farmers. He says recent trade deal with China is good news for those who grow for a living.
They have committed for the remainder of this calendar year to buy 12 million tons of soybeans, and for each of the remaining 3 years in the president's term, a minimum amount of 25 million tons of American soybeans.
Economist Steve Moore says things are much better than Americans are being led to believe when it comes to media reports about the U.S. economy. And while he is bullish on America right now, Moore admits there is one area that's a little tricky for most families.
It is true. Housing is very expensive right now because, the
the value of houses have gone up so much. We're not building enough houses in this country, but we're going to solve that problem like we solve every problem.
Moore was interviewed this week by the Salem Radio Network. You'll find breaking news and analysis at townhall.com. Boeing and NASA have agreed to keep astronauts off the company's next Starliner flight to the International Space Station, settling instead for a trial run with nothing on board but cargo.
That announcement comes 8 months after the first and only Starliner crew hitched a return trip to Earth aboard SpaceX. In 2024, NASA test pilots Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams managed to dock Boeing Starliner to the International Space Station. But the capsule had so many problems that NASA ordered the capsule to return to Earth empty, leaving the astronauts stuck on the space station for more than 9 months. Boeing engineers are still working on Starliner's thruster and other issues. Boeing says they are still committed to the Starliner program. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
U.S. stocks ended higher in a shortened Black Friday session, closing at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday, and it was a fifth straight day of gains, capping the best weekly rally since the month of June.
There's a price war in the insurance business, and you may be paying too much. Call the Term Lifeline right now and see if you can save 40%. $500,000 plans and up, that's our specialty. Even great smokers' rates. Protect your family today. Call the Term Lifeline right now for a free quote. 866-509-TERM. 866-509-TERM. 866-509-TERM.
What's the best way to get rid of a timeshare that you don't want? Call the Timeshare Exit Hotline. We're a group of attorneys that help customers legally exit their timeshares. It's an easy process. We guarantee results or you pay nothing. Exit your timeshare today. Call now.
800-890-5957. 800-890-5957. That's 800-890-5957.
Fixed bayonets, comrades. This is Chief Gardner Republic Radio Show, second half, every Saturday, noon until 2. This is the 1 until 2 version. And WRMN, 1410 AM, Fox River Valley Media Network, streaming on WRMN1410.com. Studio number here is 847-931-1410. The text is 505-926-1410, or you could hit us up in the comments on the YouTube Live WRMN 1410 channel. And let me give me a little shout out to who do I follow? Because it was Marcus. We had a recording of Marcus right before my show.
We did, yes.
And when Marcus is in here, it's Mike Napolitano, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So shout out to him with his On the Rise radio show, because he gave me a shout. He gave us a shout out, Paul, the other day, and I think that it's only fair we give him a shout out too, because everything I know about local sports, everything I know about sports local to the Chicagoland area is through Mike Napolitano, because I really don't pay a lot of attention to sports. I'd rather play than watch. And so, Paul, I got off of it on a lighter subject of the big mess ups in the military housing. And I got just one more story to try, kind of explain military leadership when it comes to housing the troops and how they really care about it, right? Like they have a deep care. It's a matter of instilling in these officers that they are there to take care of the troops, not to punish the troops, but to take care of it, to mentor them, to raise them, to teach them how to be decent human beings. And they've gotten away from that. You do something bad, I punish you. I'm not going to tell you why it's bad. I'm just going to punish you because it's easier. It's easier for me to think that way. All right, so we're at Fort Dix, a place where I would gleefully get 5 gallons of gasoline and a couple car flares and walk around the place and end it, really, because Fort Dix is not a happy place. All right, because it was run as a deployment center. And the people who were running it were pretty messed up. That was the New Jersey National Guard was running it. So we're out at this thing they call a FOB, a forward operating base. And it's to get you acclimatized to your housing, how you're going to live out in Afghanistan or Iraq, right?
Yeah.
And I've already lived that. I've already had those experiences in Haiti and Panama and Bosnia and Afghanistan. I've already had that. You don't need to teach me how to suffer. I know how to suffer. But one of the main things was the senior officers and the senior NCOs, anyone sergeant first class and up, anyone above the rank of second lieutenant, they would put you in a van and they would just drive you around like in a week to all the deployment training you had to do. You would get it all done. They would get everyone done in a week. And then you would be in the rear with the gear, making sure that all of your administrative work and supplies and logistics were getting done while your troops were going through this training, right? Well, the ad hoc group that I was with, I can't tell you how messed up they were, right? They didn't do that. They had an opportunity to do it, but they didn't, which means that all of the senior people had to go out with the people, which is something that they hadn't seen on this FOB. They don't see people, warrant officers, captains, right? Sergeants first class. So we're out at this FOB here, and of course it's New Jersey, and of course they're contracting with someone to clean the 32 porta potties that they had around this FOB for approximately 1,100 people, which means they should be cleaned twice a day. They hadn't been cleaned in 2 weeks. Now, the thing is that, all right, a guy can go find the truck and take care of business on a tire or something, hide in the corner, right? And if you had to do anything solid, you would have to hold it until you went into base. And then when you're going into a classroom on the actual base, there would be a line of 100 people waiting to use the flush toilets, right? Because what happened is these porta potties have filled up to the point where blue water was coming out of them. Blue water was overflowing. But, the girls come up to me and they go, "Chief, what do we do?" I mean, it's disgusting. The stuff is overflowing and everything, right? And I says, well, I guess you got to go to the showers. So go into the shower and you got to cast the squad over the drain there. Right? And so now, one of the things, everyone had these cell phones. This is years back. So they all had the cell phones that were 500 milliamp chargers. Right? So you're talking about 5 volts at 500 milliamps. 5 times at 1/2 is 2.5 watts. So each charger carries 2.5 watts. We're staying in tents, canvas tents, and they had one outlet with 2 plugs in each tent. So what we would do is got a extension cord, and you could plug multiple 2.5 watt chargers into the extension cord. So at the most, right, if you had a power bar with 8 things on there, you're talking about 20 watts. You're drawing 20 watts across, right? 20 watts, and you're talking about 4 amps across a line that's designed to hold 15 amps. It's not going to overheat. It's not going to catch on fire or whatever. But they had a policy that you couldn't use extension cords because it was a fire hazard, because apparently some people had tried to plug in space heaters or whatever, right? So here comes this major, and he's doing what they call a health and welfare inspection in this tent to make sure that we're safe, right? And of course, there's the extension cord, right? And here's the punishment. If you got caught with extension cord, they shut off the electricity to your tent.
Oh, wow.
So now you got no lights or anything in there, right?
That's kind of a final option type thing.
Well, yeah. So, okay, so I got to get this guy. He says, health and welfare inspection. I says, hey, Major, allow me to show you a health and welfare problem here. And he goes, where? I says, it's very serious. Now, I'm a chief warrant officer, right? I don't care. So I take him out and I says, see those porta potties? See the blue water coming out of them? There were 8 in a group there. I says, that's a health and welfare problem there. That's getting people sick. We can't use them because they haven't been pumped out in 2 weeks. He goes, I'll take care of it, Chief. He goes and gets yellow tape, and they wrap the things off and put them off limits. Now we've gone down from 32 porta potties to 24. And they're all filled up, right? They haven't done anything about them. So now I'm standing in line. Back then, when I deployed, I'd start smoking again. So they had a truck trailer that was a mini PX, right? So I'm standing in line with all these guys. And mind you, they don't see warrant officers or senior officers or anything out there, captains or majors or sergeants first class. The only thing they see is like second lieutenants and staff sergeants. So they treat them a little differently. So I'm standing in line, and the 72nd Division, which I believe is the New Jersey National Guard, right? Their command sergeant major, their senior enlisted guy, is glad-handing people, and he sees everyone standing in line at the PX. And he goes, how's it going, guys? And I shout at the top of my lungs, I says, it'd be going a lot better if you cleaned the blank porta potties. And he comes running up. He's angry as hell, right? Because he's just going to rip my head off because he thinks I'm a staff sergeant or below, right? Or even second lieutenant, which technically outranks him. And he runs up, and I point at the rank. I go, I'm a warrant officer. Stand at attention when you address me. And now he doesn't know what to do. He goes, well, he all of a sudden he changes from super angry and aggressive. He calms down a little bit, right? And he goes, well, what's the problem, Chief? And I go, the porta potties haven't been cleaned in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, they're disgusting. None of these people can, he says, I can't pick up a phone and call the company to get them out here to do it. I don't have an SST, which is a blank sucking truck, to come out and clean these porta potties. I don't have that, right? I don't have any. He says, I'll see what I can do. And here's a guy whose only job was to go around this gravel base, right? On a four-wheeler, kicking up dust and gravel and everything in everyone's face, because I've never seen him do anything else. He's an E4 and he works for the Guard. He isn't deploying. And Sergeant Major, right, asks him, hey, specialist, what are they doing about the porta potty problem? And the specialist, I just about died, because he goes, they're working the issue, Sergeant Major, which is basically telling the Sergeant Major to go stuff himself, right? You're not giving him the answer. You're just giving him a flippant thing. They're working the issue, right? Sergeant Major is about to lose his mind. He goes, gets the colonel, which is in charge of the second brigade there, right? The next day, the porta potties still aren't clean. They're not clean. This is a colonel. He's got all these people working for him. He's ultimately in charge of this. They're still not clean. No one got on the phone to get this guy out there, right? Majors and lieutenant colonels that worked what we call the mayor's office, that was responsible for the whole camp, right? And they're on active duty orders. They're making money, just being there. They were walking around picking up cigarette butts in the motor pool. That was the punishment. I says, if a colonel had told me to do that as a lieutenant colonel, or anyone told me to do that as a warrant officer, I would have said no. Nah, that's below my dignity as officer. I think that's not a good order there. I says, I'll take me up to court martial on that one. Yeah, I'm denying a direct order there. Take me up to court martial on that one. Because there's a thing about your dignity, and there's a thing about the dignity of the rank too, right? There's a dignity to that. And you don't you got to have a better way. But apparently there was no way that this colonel could punish these guys any more than that. So then the problem still isn't fixed. And I tell everyone, I says, okay, tomorrow morning we're all going on sick call. And we're going to tell the base surgeon, we're going to go into the hospital there, and we're going to all tell him that we got diarrhea. And then we're going to tell him why. All right, and said, take a couple pictures with these picture phones. He calls the colonel, the chief surgeon calls base commander. It says, if those porta potties aren't clean in 1 hour, I'm shutting down the whole base, training on the whole base. I'm shutting it all down. Get the buses, bring everyone back into the main base. I'm shutting down training on the FOB, which would put everything like backlogged for deployment. You know, it would just be awful because what? Now all of a sudden, here comes Bob on the FOB, all right? The porta potty cleaning guy, the civilian contractor that had the contract for those porta potties, that was going to get paid to clean them twice a day and hadn't cleaned them in 2 weeks, comes out with his truck and finally starts cleaning them. And that's what it took. That's what it took. All the way to threatening to shut down everything so you get one civilian contractor to go out there and do the job he contracted to do. I would have got, because this is the state, right? State National Guard. I would have called the state police and I would have had him locked up. I would have said, oh, you want bond? Yeah. Well, who's going to drive my truck? I don't care. You call another contractor and pay him quadruple to get those things cleaned. Then maybe we'll bond you out. But see, that's the point I'm making here, is that, one, you got to get on your people to get people done, to get stuff done. If we're in the barracks, you would have a duty roster and people would be assigned to clean these things on a rotating basis. Right? If you're living in your own room, right, and you're not being inspected because you're assigned to do all the cleaning, right? And you're not being inspected because you do live in government quarters. Those aren't yours. It doesn't belong to you. You're kind of leasing it, right? And no one's giving you this. No one's giving discipline in doing that. And here was the other thing, that only the lower enlisted have been beefing about that. But now some senior people come in and know what to do and know the beef, and now things start getting done. I think I'm confused. I think I'm all over the place. But so when it comes to what our Secretary of War said about that, it's not simply a matter of throwing money at it, or that money wasn't thrown at it. Lots of money was thrown at that. No one had taken overall responsibility to make sure that everything was done right. They just threw money at it, something, and said, okay, it's not going to fix I think it's been I'm talking about 2006 where the discipline, the harder discipline had started to break down, and it's going to take a while to rebuild that. It's going to take a while to rebuild your officer corps and your NCO corps. If the NCOs aren't living in the barracks with these guys, they don't see what they're doing. But they don't want to have, I'm getting crazy again. All right, so if I own a bunch of housing developments, apartment buildings, townhomes in Fayetteville, and they're empty, and they're not making any money because everyone is living on base, because there's enough government housing on base, there's enough lower enlisted housing that if you're not married with children, that you stay on base in this housing. So now you got NCOs living with the lower enlisted, but the NCOs got better, bigger rooms and everything, but they're keeping an eye on these guys too, right? But I don't have these apartments filled in Fayetteville. So they start kicking out the higher ranking guys, and they say, you have to live off post now. And then they pay that rate. And even though that apartment isn't worth the money that they're renting, everyone else charges the exact same because they know how much the government's giving you for rent. So guess what? If it's a 1-bedroom in the basement, leaky floors, purple mold, you have 150 little furry creatures as pets that you didn't bring with you, right? It's the exact same price as some 3-bedroom across the way that's nicer. But that was the only one available, and you have to live off post, but they charge you the exact same price because that's your rank. That's what the government will pay. And that's the thing. You know, there's another thing with contractors. You know, there's people profiteering off the military. The military is what they call a cottage industry for these towns. You could build wonderful government housing pretty cheap. They did it up at Fort Sheridan. They did. In the South Fort there, they tore out all the double wides. Basically, a major would be living in a double wide trailer with his family. You're kind of off Lake Michigan there. It's kind of a nice area. But then they had a contractor come in and put up all this housing that looks like any suburb out here. But it's newer, it's frame, but it's right off Lake Michigan. It's modern, it's new. You're in a gated community and everything. That's great. That's fantastic. But you're living in a house that's comparable to what people in Lake Forest, not Park Ridge. I always get these messed up. Highland Park, all right? Highland Park, not a cheap area to live, right? So this is comparable to nice houses in Highland Park. But if you lived off post, here's the kicker, right? You're associated with Great Lakes, and Great Lakes is in North Chicago. So what they pay you for your housing, right? If you're not living on the post at Fort Sheridan or on the post at Great Lakes, you only get the housing money for North Chicago. And North Chicago is pretty low. The rents are pretty low there. So you can't live in Highland Park. You can't live in Lake Forest. You can barely live in Highwood now if you don't live on base. So it's all if only I was in charge, I guess I would fix it all. But you know, I would be explaining these things to them, like to the higher ups, and they have very little concept of what's going on where the boots hit the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
So anything else happened this week that drew your attention, Paul?
Yeah, a couple things. First of all, downtown Jose says hello and to keep on going with this.
Thank you.
And I got a little bit expounding on what you're talking about. So, and it ties in almost exactly with what you're saying. So you remember what happened in Chernobyl?
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, some of the people there, they left and they never came back. So they had pets, they had dogs. Okay. So they had, so they've been watching these dogs over the last 20 years. And they've pretty much, you know, they think they've become their own, you know, species of dog and everything like that. But most recently, they've identified the dogs have taken on a bizarre color. You know what the color is?
No.
Blue. And they were wondering what happened. So they sent up a drone and they found out that the porta potties were leaking and the dogs were being dogs and they were rolling in it and they were having a good old time. But now they're a new species of porta potty blue. So I think it's an international problem with the porta potties, if you get my drift.
Yeah. That's it's poor doggies. All I could think of is the poor doggies. Now you made me sad. Thinking of poor doggies in Chernobyl. You know, they're supposed to have humans keeping a lookout for them. All right, so we're coming up on another break, and then we're going to hit the last half, and it's going to be very serious because I'm going to bring back something that Paul said, and we kind of have different views on it, but I'm torn. So you're going to see how I'm torn in a way. All right, and let's see if we can this. There we go. There's the funky jazz music. Waiting for the commercials to come on.
No, you don't have to go out.
Lots of snow out there. More snow. Way to go, snow. The lighting ceremony.
Nice.
Guess Elgin's lighting the Christmas tree.
Get ready, Lily Lake. The holiday magic is back with the second annual Christmas tree lighting happening Friday, December 5th at 5 p.m. at the heart of the village. Bring the whole family to enjoy hot drinks, local food and crafts, cozy heated tents, and yes, a special visit from Santa Claus himself. It's a winter wonderland celebration hosted by your very own village of Lily Lake, where holiday spirit comes alive beneath the glow of the village Christmas tree. Don't miss the lights, the laughter, and the joy. That's Friday, December 5th at 5 p.m. For more info, visit villageoflilylake.org or call 360-365-9677. The Village of Lily Lake is lighting up the season, and you're invited.
Is diabetes keeping you from enjoying life's special moments? At US Med, we understand the challenges you face, and we're here to help.
With US Med, I can finally manage my diabetes without it managing me.
US Med offers a wide range of services to simplify your diabetes care. Personalized care plans, convenient access to cutting-edge diabetes tech, and knowledgeable support. Plus, we'll check your insurance so your diabetes care may be covered at little or no cost to you.
With US Med, I feel confident and control of my diabetes. I can finally live my life to the fullest.
Don't let diabetes hold you back. Choose US Med and experience better birthdays, better adventures, better anniversaries, and better everything. Call now. US Med. Better service. Better care. 800-785-1673. 800-785-1673. 800-785-1673. That's 800-785-1673.
Ever tried balancing a dozen eggs in one hand while hopping on one foot? Or maybe juggling cats while riding the unicycle? Sounds ridiculous, right? But guess what? That's exactly what texting while driving is like. Your human brain only has the capacity to focus on one thing at a time. So when you're behind the wheel, give driving your undivided attention.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
When tragedy strikes, you need more than a lawyer, you need a voice. Romanucci and Blandon fight for justice in cases of personal injury, wrongful death, civil rights, and medical malpractice. With over $1 billion recovered, their results speak loud. Call 312-458-1000 or visit rblaw.net. That's 312-458-1000. Romanucci and Blandon, national impact, personalized care. No fee unless they win. Proud supporter of America's First Responders Fest.
As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
It's what we were taught, trained, and told to do.
It could be for anything. Helping a friend move.
Listening to a fellow veteran for hours, at any hour of the day.
Or just simply making time for people. A neighbor, a loved one, or even a stranger.
We're often the first to help others. There's no question about it.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
Perhaps it's time to do for yourself what you would do for others.
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health. Don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Fixed Bayonets, comrades, we're back. After a short hiatus there. Didn't get right after the call. I guess I'm late with my bayonet. So, Paul, all right, about the death penalty thing. So, as you know, I'm against the death penalty. I'm just, it's weird, you know, because if I was in war and you gave me a machine gun and I had to machine gun down, yeah, okay, fine, you know, boop, you know, that's war, that's something completely different. Much like the Geneva Conventions, Geneva Convention allows for a death penalty. It does. All right. So if you committed a heinous crime in prison, you're in a prison or war camp, and you commit a heinous crime as a prisoner, they could give you the death penalty and they could sentence you to death, but you still have to have some due process there. All right. But I am against the death penalty for the same reason I'm against abortion. It's not God's plan, all right? What God's plan is for this guy that's now in our custody, in our care, all right? In our care as compassionate human beings, all right? I'm compassionate again about the victims, certainly. But, you know, it doesn't say any, I don't care if they throw the guy in a 4 foot by 4 foot by 8 foot deep hole and throw food down to him and wash him down once a day to make sure that all the filth gets washed down some drain, and just leave him there immobile in that hole for the rest of his natural life. That's fine with me. I'm like, okay, after what he did, right? That would be what I consider far more rehabilitatory than the death penalty. The thing is, yes, we have him now. And if you don't think, if people don't think that this guy was thinking of committing suicide by cop or suicide by National Guard, he wasn't. He wasn't. One, he wasn't clean shaven. Because when they commit, when in that culture, if they're going to commit a suicide attack, right? They're going to be clean shaven. They're going to go to heaven clean. This guy had no intention he was going to get away. He knew he was going to get away. If he got captured, he knew the system would keep him alive. Like, all right, we got Nadim Hassan. Dude's been cleared for execution. Absolutely cleared for execution. How many months ago? I mean, he has no more. He's completely out of any appeals. He's done. That's it. They could hang him at any day. Hang him any day they want, right? Oh my God, it's the end of the world. The plow just went by. I haven't seen one all morning. Now we just saw one. And it is snowing pretty nice out there. So he knows, right? And you say that the rumor is that his family has already left the country?
That's what I heard.
Yeah. So he knew what he was going to do. It was planned out.
No, I think the government picked him up and they're sending him away. They're getting rid of him because he's not here. There's no reason for them to stay here now. So they're going. That's what I heard.
It's probably for their own good too.
That would probably be
prevent vigilantism.
Right.
You know, if they're gonna put up a GoFundMe page, have them put it up somewhere else.
Yep.
So the guy's got status here. He's in the United States. He came over. He was given a refugee visa, probably under false circumstances or whatever. But he has status, so he's going to have to go through the whole due process, and it's going to drag. It's going to drag. And there will be people using, right? Using we need to make sure that everyone gets justice, that they get due process and everything, to make names for themselves, to file appeals, to go and defend this guy. So I'm wondering do you think, which lawyer you think is going to defend this guy? Which big name is going to go out there and say, well, I'm going to defend this guy, give him the best defense possible?
You know, I don't know. You'd be surprised at that. There's some people that they call true believers and stuff like that. I'm not saying that he necessarily has to be put up in front of a firing squad or something like that. I'm just saying, I think the trial needs to be militarily, and I think it needs to be quick. And then he'll still get appeals. He'll get more appeals now than people in World War II got. But I don't think it belongs in our civil justice system, because this wasn't a form of civil justice that needs to be done. It needs to be done. It needs to be done swift, and it needs to be done in a way that you can't bastardize the system and use your system against you to delay it and make more people out of it. And again, the faster this happens, the less of a chance that somebody else will do it, because they're counting on it. And then, they're counting on some do-gooders 25 years from now, convincing somebody to put them on parole or to give them, no, let's do it now. And, whatever sentence he gets, whether it's 40 years making little rocks out of big ones and maybe gluing them back together again, or if he gets the death penalty, he doesn't have to get the death penalty as far as I'm concerned. He just needs to get a military tribunal type justice, and it needs to be pretty fast.
How does he fall under the military? How does he fall under military UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice?
Well, I would view him as an enemy combatant in civilian clothes in the country, killing our military.
Oh, so you're going to have him as a spy, espionage?
Well, same difference. He'd get the same thing. But I want him tried right now. Give him his couple of months to get his, and you know what? I'm sure it's going to come out that there's some mental issues or something like that, and I'm okay with that.
The guy's probably got an IQ of 75.
Well, it doesn't matter. You got to remember something. You got to remember something. We just had the Slender Man girl. Okay, she's a woman now. She stabbed somebody 12 years ago, a 12-year-old. She's got, she's old enough now where transsexuals are breaking in and meeting her at night, helping her escape, and she somehow gets to Chicago, and then she walks to Posen. Okay, and then, but the whole point was there were 3 psychologists that said, hey, she's getting better, okay? And we need to put her in a group home, okay? And she originally got like 40 years. She wasn't convicted criminally. She was convicted in a mental health system, okay? We got to stop this. This stuff has to stop, because this is getting to be ridiculous. And my question is, will these psychologists now be in trouble? The 3 of them, that joined together and stuff like that.
How about the judges? How about the judges that bond guys out? Give them like no bond or very low bond. They're not getting in trouble. They're getting bad press, but no one's telling them, well, you can continue to be a judge, but you're never going to sit on the bench again.
Well, again, I'm going to give you 2 examples of that. I'm going to give you 2 examples of that.
Okay.
There was a judge who was a friend of mine. He's since deceased now, and he was a very good friend of mine. And I was working bond court, okay. And I said to him, when the guy came up, I said, the state is seeking no bond. Okay. Now, I don't know what he was thinking, whatever. And he gave him a very low bond. And I said, Your Honor, we'd respectfully request that if you're inclined to give him a bond, to give him a high bond. No, I'm sticking with that. Okay. So what happened was the guy got out and he killed the victim. And it just so happened that my parents and I were having dinner with this judge the next day. It was a Sunday. And I said, hey, I just want to let you know that I wasn't trying to be funny. I go, that guy killed the woman after you let him out. And then I said, next time, maybe when somebody tells you, a high bond or no bond, you might want to really consider that. And then as I was telling somebody on Thanksgiving, there was a judge one time, and nice guy, real nice guy, knew him really well, used to work with him before he became a judge. And I was working bond court, and my bosses told me to let him know there was a police officer, Seriali, that got shot under the vest. And he passed away, and the guy came up for bond. And it was funny. He came up for bond like twice in a week. And it was, the judge had let him go on a low bond the first part of the week, and he was out to be able to shoot the police officer. And I told him that, and he goes, I know you didn't do that bond hearing, but he goes, when that issue comes up, I'm just going to say that the state didn't prove their case.
Yeah, well, so he's passing it off on someone else.
Well, no, there's no way to prove that because it was subjective, because he was the dude that let him go.
There's no way to prove that if you release someone on a bond, even on like an I bond, that they're going to commit a crime. You can't prove they'll go commit a crime. They could be as gentle as a lamb for the rest of their life. They could have had a come to Jesus meeting with Jesus in the lockup while they're waiting for the bond hearing and said, I'm never going to do anything wrong. You can't prove that they're going to do something bad. But you know what? You can play the odds, because these judges, when they go to Vegas, they're not going to bet against the odds. They're going to play the odds, right? But with people, they're not going to, they're going, well, how do you know? And they do it. And then with impunity, they do exactly what you said. Right? They said it was the state, right? How many times is a detective that the state loses a case because they just looked at it for like 10 seconds before it went to trial, never interviewed you, never interviewed the witnesses until right before the trial, never got anything going, and they get blown out of the water by a high-speed defense attorney. But it's my fault because I didn't do a significant enough investigation, even though I had to jump through 100 hoops to get felony. Well, one case in point with these judges is like we have a do not retain thing, right?
Uh-huh.
When they come up for election.
Right.
How many times do they got to go through do not retain before they're permanent on the bench?
No, they have to not get 70% of the vote in that election. So it doesn't matter how many do not retain. It's how they must get like 70% or 60% of they must be voted to be retained by at least 70% of the people voting in that election.
Well, I can't see how any of them are still on the bench because I go down the list and I'm like, nope.
It's voting for judges. So a lot of people don't vote for judges because there's 20 pages of them. And so
I do.
Only the ones voting are the ones that, are motivated to vote. They either really dislike the guy, which is a small percentage, or it's they're voting,
party
line, or they're voting for the guys they like.
Right.
So that's why.
I had a case where this guy's in Ohio, right? And his baby mama gets an order of protection out against him, right? And a warrant for his arrest for beating her. So he's got a warrant and he's got an order of protection, right? He goes into court. He claims that she is abusing the child and not taking care of the child, right? And he gets, right, he's suing for custody now. But he's in this court, and he's got a warrant and order of protection, and now she gets notified, and she says, this has got to be some BS, so she doesn't show up in court. So the judge gives this guy a default finding and says, you now have custody of your child. He goes to the daycare center, picks up his child in Ohio, and flees to Chicago with the child, kidnaps the child. She goes and says, where's my child? Well, the judge gave him legal custody because he didn't show up in court. And she goes, what do you mean? He's got an order, I got an order of protection against him and a warrant for his arrest. She goes to the FBI. FBI doesn't want to hear it. You know why? You know why? He had legal custody of the kid when he went. So it's a civil matter for her, right? But this stuff goes all in the press, right? In Ohio, you know, judge gives custody of a child to a guy that's got a warrant and, you know, an order of protection. And the order of protection covered the girl. But the clerk never looked this guy up. No one bothered to look this guy up, right? He got thrown off the bench. He got do not retained because he got such bad press. He was do not retained off the bench in Ohio, right? And a couple years later, one of these, God bless them, one of these ladies that have nothing better to do but go through the internet, you know, to be in do-gooders, she saw this little girl's picture, and she's like, that girl goes to school with my daughter. And she calls the mother and everything. Anyways, it was a whacked out case there. And the other one, remember up in Wisconsin, the police officer that got like really seriously injured by that wrestler?
Yeah.
And what was it? The judge gave him like double secret probation or something. And that judge got tossed because they made a big thing out of that. You know, here you got this guy beating up a police officer and he doesn't get any time. You know, and but on the federal level, that doesn't happen. Once you're appointed a federal judge, you have to be impeached.
It's to serve for life.
Yeah. Now you don't have to sit on the bench.
They have what's called senior judge status.
So one of the things that the president could do about that, right, the senior executive officer, if he's got a judge that's making weird findings or whatever, overreaching their judicial thing that they should know because they should have passed their 8th grade civics test, right, that he could eliminate their district. Just say, your district doesn't exist. You're not fired. You're a judge, but you don't have a bench to sit on. And then he could put the district under a different name, different number or anything, and reappoint a different judge. And say, oh, you don't have it. But here's the cool thing, right? This is where the judicial branch has to self-police, which I don't see a lot of. I don't see Supreme Court coming down and censuring these people. You know, you're wasting our time. You should know better, right? Censure them. But they're not doing that. No one self-police. The Congress doesn't self-police. The judicial system doesn't self-police. But when you wipe out that district, every other judge loses their bench too. And now, yeah, you're still getting paid as a judge. We've got this 3-foot by 3-foot cubicle for you to sit in at this computer, and here's a list of data entry that we want you to do. But you're a judge. You know, you're getting paid judge wages to do this. Right? So, and we want you there. We're going to have you on a time card. You're going to punch in and punch out. And here are your new hours, 12 midnight to 8 a.m. Or better yet, here's the kicker. Here, 8 p.m. to 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. Those are your new hours.
I would make them write a letter to each of the new citizens that gets sworn in during that quarter or that month or whatever. I would make them write a nice individual personal letter to each of those new citizens. And that would be their job function the whole time that they were there. That would be it. They would be writing a nice letter on behalf of the government to each of the new citizens. And I'd be checking it for grammar. I'd be checking it for punctuation. And I'd be checking it.
No,
again
I wouldn't do it.
again.
I wouldn't do it. I would have another judge that's not sitting on the bench anymore check their stuff.
Right. Exactly. It would be busy work for the busy guys.
And here's the best part, right? The guy that writes the letter, he only writes the text. He doesn't put his header on it.
Yeah, right.
He doesn't put his signature on it, so no one knows where it's coming from. So that goes to another random judge that isn't sitting on the bench anymore. He doesn't know who it's from, right? And now he makes all the red marks and all over it and everything, and he bounces it back, right? So this guy's looking, oh my God, and they do it to each other, and they don't know who they're doing it to.
Right.
Unless they start using code words.
Correct.
But yeah, all right, so there's a way. You just got to have the intestinal fortitude, like disciplining the lower enlisted, right? These judges are on discipline. Do whatever they want, whenever they want, however they want. Treat people however they want because they're a judge. They judge on their feels and not on the law.
Correct.
All right? Any judge that judges on their feels shouldn't be a judge. There's compassion. That's why you have extenuating circumstances. Oh, he's such a young man. I don't want him to spend the rest of his life in prison. He murdered 32 children. But he's such a young man. Look at him. He's so handsome. I go, yeah, he'll have lots of dates in prison. He'll make lots of friends. But
there's more to this than that. If he's very resourceful, he could start do like a calendar of all the good looking bodybuilding prisoners in prison for the year. And then he could promote that, and I'm sure there'll be tons of women that would want to buy that. Especially, they'll be corresponding with that, and then they'll sell that calendar and then use it to help the prison, system, whatever.
The prison library.
So, I
buy more books
this.
for the prison library.
Exactly. Or,
Yeah, it just the thing is, you need some discipline. You need some policing. If you don't have the discipline and the mentoring of the lower enlisted, right, of the GI Joes, the Navy, the younger Navy guys, Air Force guys, if they're not being watched, they will get away with murder. And if these judges aren't being severely disciplined, or just disciplined in an embarrassing way, right, where you made this finding, okay, I love President Jackson, okay, the Supreme Court has made their ruling, now let them enforce it. And here's these judges. They make the ruling, go, okay, nice ruling there, Judge. What are you going to do about it? You're going to find me in contempt and give me a fine? Presidential immunity, go pound sand. I'm in office. You can't do that. Yep, you want to read the Constitution? Should I read it to you? Are you incapable of reading? Did you just guess abracadabra all the way down on your bar exam? Manage to pass. And you got to have the fortitude, but you'll get the press. You don't who are your allies in this? Me, people that can think straight, people that can think for themselves, people that believe nothing. I believe nothing that I see on TV, half of what I hear on the radio, and everything I smell in the street.
Have a great week.
Great week.